Farms in Oregon are dying, and you won't believe the reason behind it. What is it? Well, policies. I know it sounds so silly to say, but the backbone of our economy is dying because of policies. But that is the reality that these farms are facing. And you know that these things are always controversial. There are farm supporters and environmental protectors. But either way, I'll just lay the facts down for you, because this will affect all of us and have a domino effect. You see, this is just the tip of the iceberg, and other states have started to do the same thing. Let me explain. What's really happening in Oregon? Well, to put things in simple perspective, just imagine that you've got a charming little homestead, just a few acres with a couple of cows and some clucking chickens. Seems pretty idyllic, right? Well, not anymore. Thanks to some baffling new laws, your peaceful farm might now be labeled as a concentrated animal feeding operation. Yeah, you heard that right. Suddenly, small farms are being lumped in with massive industrial operations, all because of a couple of cows and a rocky trail. It's like cracking a nut with a sledgehammer. Farmers are waking up to find they're facing the same heavy regulations as big-time producers, and it's not just annoying, it's downright devastating. And it gets worse. These laws are so broad that even if you've only got a few backyard chickens, you're dealing with the same insane rules as a giant factory farm. It's almost like the state doesn't care if you've got 2 chickens or 200, they're coming for you either way. Take Godspeed Gallo Farm in Newburgh, for example. This small, family-run farm got hit with a cease and desist order and a massive fine just for having a gravel path to their milking machine. The news spread like wildfire, and now everyone's talking about how Oregon is failing its small farmers. But what is the law exactly? And what does it mean? Well, we don't have to go too far to understand what this does to small farms. Just look at the Godspeed Gallo Farm. I mean, we're talking about a small-time operation here, but suddenly you're being treated like you're running one of those massive factory farms. How does that even make sense? Oregon's law is so broad that it's tossing small, family-run farms into the same pot as those industrial giants with thousands of animals. The trouble lies in how the law defines a CAFO. Basically, if your farm has certain features, say a gravel path leading to your barn, or a couple of small buildings for your animals, boom, you're slapped with a CAFO label. And with that label comes a heap of regulations, permits and fees that are more suited to a factory farm than your little slice of cozy lifestyle. The rules we're dealing with were clearly not crafted with a small farm in mind. No, these regulations come from a place where they assume every farm is a sprawling beast of waste production that needs to be tightly controlled. Can you imagine the frustration? And small farmers are not just sitting around twiddling their thumbs about it. No, they've jumped into action, slapping a lawsuit down and arguing that these rules are not just vague, but downright ridiculous for small-scale farms. Their question is, why in the world should we face the same heavy-handed scrutiny and sky-high costs as the big factory farms when we're just trying to run a modest, sustainable homestead? And let's be real, they've got a solid argument. This law seems less like a precision tool and more like a sledgehammer. It's supposed to protect the environment and ensure safe waste management, but instead, it's turning into a nightmare for the very farmers who are committed to sustainable practices. Instead of tailoring solutions to fit the scale of the operation, the law is swinging wildly, and the little guys are caught in the crossfire. So while the intention might be to safeguard our environment, the execution is proving to be a real head-scratcher for those who are just trying to do things right on a smaller scale. Well, that's Oregon for you, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. Let me break it down for you. Water issues. Another major headache for small farmers is Oregon's water regulations. It feels like navigating a maze of laws that seem to cater more to the big players in agriculture than the charming small-scale homesteads. It's not just about securing water, though that's a big part of it. It's about a wider crisis that's putting small farms at risk all over the state. The troubles are rooted in a mix of old-school regulations and new challenges. The state's water laws, dating back to 1909, are based on something called the Prior Appropriation Doctrine. In plain terms, this means water is considered a public resource, and anyone who wants to use it needs to get a permit. Sounds straightforward, but what started as a smart system to manage water has become a real stumbling block for small farmers. These old rules were great for managing resources back in the day, but now they're creating a tough environment for the little guys. Instead of being a helpful guide, the regulations are becoming more like a hefty roadblock, making it difficult for small farms to thrive. The original intent was to ensure water was used efficiently and fairly, but now it's just another layer of red tape for those who are already working hard on a smaller scale. Small farmers with their limited resources and sometimes sketchy understanding of these complex legal requirements are finding themselves in a tough spot. You see, you're up against regulations that were clearly designed with large operations in mind, not the charming, modest farms that are the backbone of Oregon's agricultural diversity. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. These laws are just not set up to support small-scale operations that are crucial to the state's farming landscape. So what's the big takeaway? Well, the current scene in Oregon is a real hot mess. The worst part? The state is grappling with a serious drought, and climate change is cranking up the heat. We're talking about a drastic reduction in rainfall and shrinking water supplies that are putting a major squeeze on both residents and farmers. In some areas, groundwater is drying up faster than a sponge left in the sun, leading to parched wells and struggling farms. If you thought I was just exaggerating and you're wondering just how bad it is, just ask the Oregon Water Resource Department, which is sounding the alarm. They've reported that overpumped aquifers are causing massive water shortages. This isn't just a problem for agriculture, it's hitting home for everyone. Residents are feeling the pinch, and small farms are in particularly tough spot with their operations hanging by a thread. As a result, the Oregon Water Resources Department is now stepping up its game with strict enforcement of water rights. They're not messing around, and small farmers are getting hit hard. For example, Oak Song Farm, a quaint little operation near Eugene, got a notification that they couldn't irrigate their crops without proper water, which is a tough thing to do. So this news was a real gut punch to the farm, which depended on well water to keep things running smoothly. And this situation raises a crucial question. How can we balance the need for sustainable water management with the survival of our small essential farms? Well, Oregon seems to have the answer. Bureaucracy. Remember the Oak Song Farm, the one that got told to get a proper permit? Well, in order to do that, they need to go through a planned and systematic bureaucracy. Imagine trying to wade through a swamp. Now add layers of paperwork, fees, and bureaucratic jargon, and you've got a taste of what it's like to secure a water permit. For many small-scale farmers, the permit process is not just a headache, it's a full-blown financial strain that can drain their resources faster than the water dries. So what's the deal with these permits? Well, if you want to keep your crops hydrated and your farms flourishing, you need to jump through some serious hoops. Farmers must apply for water rights to irrigate their crops, a process that's slow and can stretch out for months or even years. Recently, this bureaucratic maze has tripped up a lot of small farmers. Many were operating under the impression that their water use was totally above board, only to be hit with the harsh reality that they were breaking state laws. Now, I'm not saying that they have a horrible law, that's not the point here. They even have some perks and exemptions for domestic use, like if you're watering your garden or filling up your personal pool, you're good to go up to 15,000 gallons a day without much hassle. But here's where it gets tricky. These exemptions don't apply if you're farming for profit. So if you're trying to grow crops to sell, you're out of luck when it comes to using exempt well water irrigation. This mismatch between what's legally allowed and what small farmers need to survive is creating a major obstacle. Farmers who are just trying to make a living and provide fresh produce are being bogged down by a system that's clearly geared towards larger operations. The crazy part is not just about the paperwork, it's about the very real impact these regulations have on the livelihoods of those who keep our food supply running. So here's the question. As these small farmers battle through the permit purgatory, how can we rethink the rules to support them better? After all, isn't it time we found a way to streamline this process so that our hard-working farmers can focus on growing crops rather than drowning in bureaucracy? We need them, and if we don't protect them, the consequences will be dire. So let's zoom out for a sec and take a look at the broader impact of tightening water regulations on small farmers in Oregon. The result. First up, let's talk dollars and cents. Many small farms operate on the slimmest of margins, and access to water is a lifeline they can't afford to lose. Imagine a business where a hiccup in water access could lead straight to financial disaster. That's the harsh reality for farmers like Christina Del Campo. For her and many others, these new regulations aren't just inconvenient, they're existential threats. The cost of securing water rights or facing hefty penalties for non-compliance can be so steep that it risks shutting down their entire operation. It's not just a few extra expenses, it's about the survival of their business. But the economic strain isn't the only issue at play. Small farms do so much more than just grow food. They're a crucial part of our local food systems, delivering fresh, locally grown produce right to our communities. When these farms face challenges or have to shut their doors, it's not just a loss of produce, it's a hit to our food security. The ripple effect means we end up relying more on large-scale agricultural operations. These big players might not always have local interests or sustainability at heart. So as small farms falter, we might find ourselves with less access to fresh, locally sourced food and more dependence on distant large-scale suppliers. But how are the big farms doing? The ones that have the power to fight this? What's their strategy? Because it matters even more than the small ones. There are giant companies that have strong power and say-so in the world. So let's dissect everything. How do they fight it? If you think these giants are just sitting around waiting for the storm to pass, think again. They're mobilizing like never before with a full arsenal of tactics, legislative maneuvers, courtroom showdowns, and economic arguments. First up, we've got the big players like the National Pork Producers Council and the American Farm Bureau Federation stepping into the fray. They're not just murmuring about these new EPA regulations, they're going full throttle. Why? Because the proposed rules would mean more CAFOs would need to secure permits for operations that are already on a tight budget. It's like throwing a wrench into a well-oiled machine. As of October 2023, Congress was buzzing with debates about these regulations. Agricultural lobbyists were making the case, spotlighting the potential economic wreckage for rural communities that lean heavily on CAFOs for jobs and economic stability. These organizations argue that the existing regulations are just fine and dandy, and adding more red tape could be the nail in the coffin for many farms. They're worried that this could force them out of business, hitting farmers where it counts, right in their wallets. And this is already causing a domino effect in other states like Wisconsin. This state is in the thick of a fierce battle to keep local governments from slapping on stricter CAFO regulations. The argument here is that while local rules might look like a good idea on paper, they could spell disaster for the economic stability of CAFOs. Lawmakers are hustling to keep regulations at a level that won't strangle these operations. They're working to make sure that local authorities don't overstep, imposing rules that could throttle agricultural activities. This is part of the bigger trend where states are flexing their legislative muscles to shield agricultural interests from what they see as overly restrictive local regulations. And on top of all of this, CAFOs are duking it out with environmental groups in courtrooms across the country. This isn't just a simple legal skirmish, it's a full-on showdown. The CAFOs are firing back with a mix of courtroom strategy and hard facts. But environmental groups are also really laying on the pressure, urging the EPA to tighten the reins on CAFOs. Their goal? To force these operations into stricter compliance with environmental standards. But it's not easy. Look at Janine May Barden and Murphy Brown LLC case, for example. Here, plaintiffs accused a CAFO of mishandling waste, leading to unpleasant issues like bad smells and waste runoff. Despite these claims, the court sided with the CAFO, highlighting the tough job plaintiffs have in proving that the CAFO's actions directly caused their problems. This case really shines a light on how challenging it can be for environmental groups to pin down CAFOs in court. They have a strategy. Agricultural groups are not just twiddling their thumbs, they're hitting back with solid arguments and a stack of evidence. Their pitch? Many states already have regulations that are tougher than what the federal government mandates. They argue that CAFOs are held to a zero-discharge standard. This means that they can't just let waste flow without a proper permit. The agricultural group asserts that these existing regulations are so stringent that layering on additional rules would be redundant and pretty much unnecessary. But how much does it hurt them? I mean, this seems simple from the outside, but this market is a bit complicated. Whenever companies struggle, they just jack up the prices and pass it down to the customer. Just think about it. Have you ever wondered how stricter environmental regulations might affect what you pay at the checkout? Well, that is exactly what the CAFO representatives are sounding the alarm about, claiming that tougher rules could pump up food production costs. And you guessed it, that means your food bill might follow suit. What is the gist of their argument? If production becomes pricier, those extra costs have to land somewhere, and it's often right in your shopping cart. According to the US Department of Agriculture, the cost of producing pork has surged by about 30% over the last 5 years. Why? Rising feed prices and the expenses tied to meeting regulatory standards have played a big role. Imagine your favorite pork products getting more expensive because farmers are paying more to keep up. It's only caused by rules created ourselves. It's a tricky balancing act, and while farmers are feeling the pinch, so are customers. Everyone's watching those grocery store prices, from policymakers to shoppers. But there's another layer to this financial drama. You see, federal farm subsidies are like a financial safety net for CAFOs, helping to keep their operations afloat despite the choppy waters of new regulations. These subsidies are crucial for maintaining the financial health of large-scale farming operations. And in 2022, the Farm Bill poured $428 billion into various agricultural programs, including subsidies for those massive operations. The idea is to keep the cash flowing to CAFOs, making sure they can stay in business even when faced with mounting regulatory pressures. It's all about balancing the books and ensuring these farms can keep producing without breaking the bank or driving up your food costs too much. But let me ask you a question. Why? Why are they doing this if they are the exact ones causing all this hardship? Why do the opposite here? What is the point of being a government if you have two segments doing the opposite of each other? Well, the answer is pretty complicated if you ask a political expert. But for us, the consumers and the taxpayers, it seems useless. Or am I the only one feeling like this? If you want us to dive even deeper into this topic and present a more detailed video, just interact with the buttons below. And remember, next time you're in the grocery store, there's a lot more behind those price tags than meets the eye. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.